We have a wonderful panel that has been pulled together, and the topic is at the intersection of race and community. Where do we go from here? We've heard from Dr. Herring earlier talk about the season that we are in. And so what we wanted to do was pull together some experts from various facets of the community to share with us, share their wisdom, share their expertise. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful moderator, Mo Ivory, who is no stranger to us. Mo is a member of which class, Mo?
1991. Woo!
1991, our Spelman sister. But Mo is also a political consultant. She is a professor. She has, as the young people say, she's been in these streets trying to make sure that we are being heard on CNN and various. So much for joining us.
Well, hello, everybody, to all my Spelman sisters. Thank you so much, Adrienne, for that introduction. And just thank you for being here on a Saturday afternoon when I know so many of us are mentally and also physically exhausted from all of the things that are going on in our country. So I'm excited to spend a little time this afternoon digging into these topics that I know that we're all so passionate about. Just for a little rules of the game, we'll be here for about 45 minutes. To listen and draw upon experiences. If you have any questions, just please put them in the chat. We have collected questions ahead of time, so we will also be asking many of those questions. And as I stare into the screen, I'm so happy to see so many women that I know well and that are joining us for this conversation today. Of course, we have the Honorable Shirley Franklin. We have Elizabeth Omalami, so dear to my heart. And of course, our very own Dr. Mary Schmidt Campbell. So let me give you a couple of introductions. I know that you know these ladies well, but I'll just go ahead with a little bit of an introduction. Shirley Franklin was elected the first African-American woman mayor of a major southern city in the year 2002 and served 2 terms as our mayor here in Atlanta. She currently serves as the executive chairman of chairwoman of Purposeful Communities, a nonprofit consulting firm that works side by side with local leaders to plan and implement a holistic neighborhood revitalization effort. She also is the president of Clarke Franklin and Associates. She also chairs the United Way of Metropolitan Atlanta's Regional Commission on Homelessness, serves as the chair of the National Center of Civil and Human Rights, and serves on the board of Volcker Alliance and Purpose-Built Schools Atlanta. She also serves on the board of directors of Muller Water Products and Delta Airlines. We all love and know the Honorable Shirley Franklin, and we're so glad that you're joining us today.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Is Elizabeth Williams Omalami, if you know anything about caring about a community and feeding hundreds and thousands of people, then you know about her. She's been on the battlefield for the Lord for over 30 years. Beginning as a very young girl, she accompanied her father, noted civil rights leader, Dr. Hosea Williams, on marches and in movements across the South and further. Her Jail for Freedom record includes being the first Black woman in 75 years to spend the night in Forsyth County Jail during the infamous marches in January of 1981. As an actress, she was able to combine her love of art with her activism as she toured in the play that her mother, State Representative Juanita T. Williams, co-wrote, titled The Life of a King. Her late parents instilled in her what we are all accountable for each other. We're accountable for the environment and responsible to do all that we can to fight for justice for everybody. Elizabeth Omalami worked for years in the background of her father's Hosea Feed the Hungry and Homeless organization with all of her efforts, and upon his passing became the organization's CEO, expanding the organization to provide an additional 40,000 dinners yearly, with the addition to staple events she already had now on MLK Jr.'s birthday and on Easter Sunday. Thank you so much for being here. She's a graduate of Hampton University.
Yes.
And a woman that needs no introduction to this crowd, our president, Dr. Mary Schmidt Campbell, who began her tenure as the 10th president of Spelman College on August 1st, 2015. Welcome, Dr. Campbell.
Thank you.
So let's get right into it. Ladies, the title of this session is At the Intersection of Race and Community, and of course couldn't be more timely for what is going on. The question is really, where do we go from here? As we start this conversation today, tell us what comes to your mind when you think about that title, At the Race of Intersection and Community. And I'll start with you, Dr. Campbell.
So first I want to just acknowledge Adrienne Lance Lucas for her leadership and for bringing us all together to have this conversation at this particular time. And my thanks to all of the alumni for their support of our students. I want to start simply by recounting what happened last weekend when I called one of my students. I had gotten a call late Saturday night that one of our students had been tased and held in custody. That was what I was told. I called that student early in the morning and I talked to her and she told me what actually happened to her. And when I put down the phone, I have to tell you, I was shaken in a way I don't think I've been shaken in years. One of our children, our students, one of our children was brutalized in a way that I haven't seen happen in a long time for no reason whatsoever. Our community, the Atlanta University Center community, the Spelman faculty and staff immediately stood up in solidarity and support. And I tell that story simply because at the intersection of race and community is where we have to stand as Spelman College. We always have to, because of the history of our country, we always have to be there and be vigilant, because at any moment we know that a member of our community is going to become a victim at this intersection. And what it means is that at any moment we are regarded as criminals, we are regarded as dangerous, we are regarded as a community that has to be policed and controlled. As a result of that, over successive years in urban centers, the police have turned into almost a military force. There's a war on drugs and a war on crime, and who's the enemy in that war? It is our community. So I think we are at a moment where we're asking the country to reckon with the reality of that. And we're asking this country to stop, to pause, and to take steps in every sector, not just education, but every sector, to begin to make some meaningful change.
Mo? Hello?
Can't hear you.
I hear you, Mo.
I hear you.
Sorry about that. Somebody muted me on the other side. Okay, so I'm unmuted now. You know, technology, but we're working with it. So, Mayor Franklin, you know, we've watched so much go on in the streets of Atlanta this past week. And as a former mayor, when you think about the intersection of race and community, can you just share with us what that means to you and what you, your experience with being the mayor and dealing with these type of racial issues?
Yes, and thank you for having me. And I'm really proud to participate in this. And I would like to build on what Madam President just said. It is very, very hard to watch law enforcement, whether it's the National Guard or local police, behave the way they behaved in that situation. And part of the reason it is so hard for me to watch it is that for over 15, 16 years, I took personal responsibility for ensuring that the protest side of government, where we were interacting with protesters and demonstrators, did not result in kind of the brutalization of the protester. And I am not here to say that there were not mistakes made, but I am both concerned about the incident and what happened, as well as the city's response to that. And I think the mayor handled aspects of that very well, but I have been troubled all week with the way the police and the National Guard were used in the city streets to basically squash protesting. And some of that I learned from Elizabeth's father and from Andrew Young. Andrew Young's first week in office, Reverend Williams and Reverend Boone and some others decided to march on City Hall. Andrew Young was the mayor. And they came in, they marched, they chanted, they made their demands. And we said to them then, there were maybe not more than 3 dozen. We said to them then that they could stay. It was fine for us if they stayed in City Hall, and they did. And Reverend Williams actually set up a tent outside of City Hall on the grass and demonstrated over a period of days and overnight. Now you say, why is that important? Because our response was that they had both the right and our obligation to protect them in order to do that. And sometimes we act as elected officials, myself included, out of fear and wanting to control things. And that results in brutalization, because when you're trying to control situations, you often believe that people are disrespecting you, and you respond the way we saw in the case of the Morehouse student and the Spelman student. So I would just say it's been very hard to be a part of from afar. So I actually went and protested on Wednesday for 5 hours with my hat on, unbeknownst to anyone else, to observe for myself, which is 99.9% of the people who were protesting had no intention of being violent or challenging the parameters that had been set up.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor Franklin, so much for sharing that with us. Elizabeth Omalami, your father, Hosea Williams, left a great legacy of political activism in this city. You are doing that now and have been for so many years. What comes to your mind when you think of the intersection of race and community, when you are often the person serving the underserved whenever there's a crisis and even when there isn't? What does it mean to you right now?
Well, thank you so much for having me here today. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think that the president that Spelman College has is the right president for this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say, Dr. Mary, that you bring the kind of, you're both a mother and a counselor and a fundraiser and all those things mixed up together. And I just want to honor you and say you're the right woman for these times.
Thank you.
And I will say that at the intersection of race and community is interdimensional poverty. I think the difference in Mayor Shirley Franklin's response to demonstrators then and what we're seeing today is that the police were actually there to protect the marchers. And we felt that. We felt that the police are here to make sure that the people that are often paid money to go in and disrupt a march so that you usurp the message, those people are found out quickly and moved away from the demonstration, that any outlier types of groups that might come in to attack the marchers, white supremacist groups or groups that just love chaos and just want to tear down the country, those people were identified and moved away from the marchers. So there was more of a camaraderie between the police and the march, and the way that she, in her wisdom and her immense experience, would handle a situation like that. And so this week, I'm quite shaken because the fiance of my nephew was beat by the police last Friday to the point that her shoulder is broken. And she is, and her name is Amber Jackson. Please go to her GoFundMe page because she can't get the surgery that she needs to repair her broken shoulder until she raises $5,000. I'm saying this to say that is in my house now.
Mm.
It's not out there. It's in my house.
Mhm.
All of 108 pounds soaking wet. And to see this big burly policeman grab her out of her car where she was trying to leave, slam her up against the concrete wall, and then take her and body slam her to the ground where her shoulder was broken. And when I got the phone call, it was my nephew, and I think she's a college graduate. And so she went to college, she got a degree in dental hygiene. She's working as a dental hygienist right now. He was crying and he said, Aunt Liz, I had to stand there. They pinned me down. And I had to stand there and watch them beat up my girlfriend, and I couldn't do anything about it. And it brought back to me, the memories, as my husband Afemo talks about how Black men had to stand by and watch their women be abused, and the pain that caused, and the healing that has not taken place. So we are such admirable people in that we are not trying to violently take over this country. We're not trying to burn down anything. We're not trying to tear down. We are probably more patriotic than most. But when it comes and sits in your lap, it's a whole different feeling. So I was shaken all week by Amber's injuries. She still hasn't had her surgery. She's walking around taking Tylenol. I mean, she doesn't even have the good drugs. She's taking Tylenol for a broken bone. She has her arm in a sling. And so those are not my memories of the police. That's not how I remember the police. I remember friendship. I remember camaraderie. I remember, okay, Reverend Williams, you getting ready to march. Okay, let us work with you and let us protect you and let us get some, even at the Thanksgiving dinners that we do and the events that we do right now, where we feed 20,000 people a year at these events, the police are called there to protect the volunteers and the homeless people that are at the dinners. So this is a whole different world that we have today. And so we must craft a response appropriate to this new dimensional reality that we're in.
Yeah. Can you just say Amber's full name one more time so people can go to that GoFundMe page?
Yes, Amber Jackson.
Amber Jackson. Thank you so much for that. I want to say that just listening to you tell that story just brings, it makes me feel more trauma. And like my stomach has hurt for at least 2 full weeks now. And I think about all the trauma that students must be feeling at Spelman and at Morehouse and everywhere. I have an 18-year-old who's getting ready to go to Morehouse in the fall. And he was like, wow, I can't, what is that? And so we've been talking about it and we've been trying to have some understanding of it. So Dr. Campbell, I wanted to ask you, we're talking about the intersection of race and community, and we often think about that brutality in Black and white. But this incident, the officers were Black.
Right.
What is being shared? Yeah, what is being shared with our students and the largest Spelman community to help them cope with just that intersection of race, and then finding and watching that traumatic event and seeing it happen by Black officers?
Right. So first, I want to thank Sister Omalami for her very kind words. I really do appreciate that. And I want to say that from the time that Mayor Franklin, you served as mayor from 2002 to 2010?
To January 10, yes.
Yes. So I think in the 10 years, from 2010 to 2020, something really fundamental has changed with the police. And so I think we saw evidence of that because yes, they were Black officers who similar to your son's fiance, our student was yanked out of the car, tased, and slammed to the ground, right? And it was a Black officer. I think the issue is race is an important issue. There's no question about it. But in addition to that, there is what has happened to law enforcement and the culture of law enforcement in the past 10 years. And the culture of law enforcement, you can look at some statistics. 99% of the killings by police officers against Black people from 2013 to 2019 were not even charged. The police officers were not even charged. There is this blue wall of silence has become, you know, a concrete Berlin Wall that can't be penetrated. The police have so many protections now. Their unions, their representatives, this notion that when an incident happens, you have to wait for several days, which of course gives police time to get their stories together, as opposed to what did happen this time, that they were arrested immediately and then charged immediately. But I think also this mindset of, as I said, of constantly picturing urban policing as a war, as I said, the war on drugs, the war on crime, this notion that they are warriors, and then being dressed in almost military garb, coming into cities for a protest with tanks. They everything about them now is as if they were an occupying force. So while race is certainly an extremely important part of this, because overwhelmingly the victims of these kinds of assaults are Black people, Black men and women. But there's also that culture of policing that has to be completely changed, and not changed around the edges and around the margins, but completely changed for policing, for the court system, for all of the criminal justice system. We are ripe to undergo just a fundamental revolution in the way we think of policing and criminal justice.
I just thank you, Dr. Campbell, for that. I want to just go straight to Mayor Franklin, you know, on the heels of you saying about how much, you know, policing has changed. So many people, Mayor Franklin, look at Atlanta as a Black Mecca, you know, as a city of when things like this happen, you know, will be a city of power for Black people and jump, you know, to action or whatever. Talk about why the policing changed so much from what you said earlier, which was that they would come out to protect the protesters, instead now are coming to, you know, basically attack the protesters or, you know, to cause more melee. Talk about why that is so different now.
Well, I'd be glad to. I want to say that what Elizabeth described was a culture within the government that influences the culture within policing. They're related. And to some extent, my generation, I'm 75, I went to college to Howard University in 1963. My classmates were founders of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. There was a lot of debate and a lot of protest even before you got to college. I was involved really on my own, not at all with my parents before I got to college. But part of that is that my generation, that generation that was in college in the 60s and the 70s, actually understood what it was like to be a protester. We were protesting. So by the time I got to office, I knew what it was like to be on the other side. And most of my peers who were in office had been activists. You think of Marion Barry, you think of Maynard Jackson, Andrew Young. I mean, Richard Arrington in Harold Washington. That generation were people who had been a part of protest. So we didn't necessarily buy into the police culture was there, but we didn't buy into the police culture. And when we were in positions of influence, because I wasn't always mayor, I worked for 2 mayors. When we were in positions of influence or authority, we brought with us a different set of experiences that helped to inform our experiences. So quickly. The Ku Klux Klan wanted to march and made an appeal to march when Andy Young was mayor. Andy Young, as all mayors do, went to lunch, and with some important people. And I was left in the office as the chief administrative officer to be the point person on how the Klan, how it was actually executed. So I took one police officer in uniform with me, and we didn't go to talk to the people in law enforcement. I had that officer walk with me through the crowd. And we saw in the crowd the people that Elizabeth has described. Yeah. We saw people who were planning to be violent, who were there only to be violent. There were only 5 Klansmen walking, but there were 5,000 people who'd come to protest that. And they were lining the streets of Atlanta, and many had on masks and hoods, had rocks in their hands. And I went to the police in that particular day and told them they had to cancel the march. And they said, "Oh no, we're ready." I said, "No, we are not ready because you haven't walked through the crowd among the people to see what's about to happen." I called Andy Young and said, "I've canceled the march." And he said, "Oh, you can't do that. It's free speech." I said, "Well, I just did." Okay. And we will have that march another day because they have a right to the march, but they don't have a right, nor does anyone have a right to be violent and disruptive in our city if we can avoid it. So we had the march 6 or 7 days later, and we were better prepared because we were working with community activists who lived in the city, who helped us to manage the anti-Klan march. Now that's more than just putting on a suit and taking my degree and my experience. That's my effort and our effort in that case, because it was a group effort. Our effort in that case was to protect the rights of the marchers, even though they were not people we liked, and to protect the rights of the anti-marchers, and to protect the city all at the same time. If you don't stop and think about that, then you end up doing things to satisfy one segment, and it could be policing, the police department, and not really think about what else is involved in that. Now, I don't know whether that would have worked this time or not. What I know is that every one of these situations requires to push people to think creatively about what we really want to happen. What we really want to happen is to protect the constitutional rights, to protect the people who are there, whether we like them or not, and to protect everybody else. And you got to do all of that. Not one of them, just clearing the streets is not enough, because then you're violating my rights to free assembly. You got to do all of that and more. I'm short-circuiting it, but I just want to put that forward. And on the issue of whether the officers are Black or white, I think the president is absolutely right. Unless you are training and explaining and making clear. One other quick example: during one of the marches, the chief told me, I asked him, how are you going to manage this? And he started describing their techniques. And I said, fine, then do them on me in this conference room. And he said, I can't do them on you. I said, then you can't do them on anyone.
Oh, that's good.
Wow.
But let me explain. I wasn't a mayor. I was a high-level official. But I didn't assume that he knew what he was talking about. He was talking about a chokehold. I said, we're not going to have anybody dragged in Atlanta. That's not going to happen on my watch. So anyway, I'm just really describing that.
I know I'm supposed to move forward, but I do have one more question for the mayor before she goes, because it's so important. And not before she goes, before I move on. Mayors appoint police chiefs.
Yes.
Right? So a lot of people would not understand if we need a reform in the police department and things are not going well in a city, a mayor appoints the police chief. So what is the disconnect? If you're a Black mayor, why wouldn't you have a police chief that is going to come in and not attack Black people?
You may not know how to do that. you want, there's a lot of times in professional life, you need to do something, but you don't know how to do it. And like anything else, I'm not that great at technology. Okay. So they'll tell you on this call, I called at 2:00 to be sure I could get it right. You understand what I'm saying? I took the extra step to be sure that I was able to live up to my obligation, which is to be on time, to be in the right place with the sound working and all of that. It's the same thing with any decision, whether it's a small decision or a big decision. When you don't know, you have to ask. And if you don't know, and we know you don't know, we need to tell you anyway.
Yeah. I feel so fatigued by that answer that like a Black mayor that gets elected wouldn't know to go to another Black mayor like yourself and figure out how to make this better in cities all across the country. Because I've been watching the news and I've been seeing Black mayor after Black mayor after Black mayor. And I feel like there just needs to be some talking to each other to say, like, I might not have made the best choice in this police chief. This police chief doesn't know what to do with all of these officers and they need to do something different. But, that's just the activist in me that wants to see some quick action happening. And
Mo,
I feel like the mayors could do that.
Let me just say very quickly, mayors do talk to each other and
Okay.
they learn a lot. And I'm sure our mayor in Atlanta has learned a lot and talked to other mayors. And I'm sure the next time something like this happens, it won't be the same way.
Okay.
But you have to hold everyone accountable, including yourself. And you have to be open to the criticism. And
Right.
Elizabeth will tell you, we haven't always agreed. She was one of the most important influences on what the city of Atlanta did around homelessness, because she spoke up. We can't be afraid of these mayors either.
Yeah, you may hear that dinging. That's all of my Spelman sisters texting me all kinds of things right now. And I'm getting them all, Spelman sisters. I'm getting your text. Sorors, I'm getting your text, but I can't look at the phone and do this at the same time. So let's keep the conversation going. Elizabeth, as young people are looking for ways to organize and to prepare for this fight that we have ahead of us, share with us how you were trained to maintain your father's legacy, but then to build one of your own.
Yes, well, as you know, when I got a degree in theater at Hampton and was fully on my way to becoming an actress and had done films and theater, but at any given time, at that time, only 2% of Actors Equity members are working at any given time. And it's much different today because we have all these streaming services and there's this big demand for content and there's a lot more work out there if you have the right team behind you. But because I was always unemployed, I was in my dad's office volunteering, as he called it, under duress. That you're not going to be just laying around at home with your feet up waiting to get that phone call. You coming to work and you're going to do what I tell you to do. Now, I don't think kids do that anymore. I don't know. But I was a daddy's girl. I needed his approval. I needed to be with him because just because he was there, when you say that you were a civil rights leader back then, it meant your life was the mission. Your whole life and everybody in it was wrapped around whatever the mission was. I learned how to fundraise being there with his method of, which doesn't really work today with the direct mailing. I learned how to manage the media. I learned how to collect the big data because he would have complaint night, and based on what the community was telling him they needed, the programs were developed. Whereas now we think we know what the community needs and we tell them, you need jobs, you need housing, you need education, you need daycare, where they might be telling us they need entrepreneurship. They may be telling us they need training so they can start their own businesses. So we're not listening in the same way today. And so in 2000, right before he died, and I will tell you that without Juanita Williams and without the women in the civil rights movement and all movements, that you never would know their names. There never would have been any hope for an organized implementation of any kind of strategic plan around any issue, but you would never know their names. So not only did they hold the office together administratively, and they held the families together because the children had to be fed, they had to be educated, they had to have some semblance of normalcy. So I say all that to say that I had two great people teaching me, and I sat at the feet of great people. I knew Fannie Lou Hamer, you know, I knew Coretta. She came to see my plays, and I called her Auntie Coretta. So when you're surrounded, and see today, I don't think our young people are surrounded by us the way they should be. I think some kind, and it may be technology, because the way they communicate is different. And so, you know, I got a Facebook page. I have an Instagram page. But do I know how to really use it? Not all the time. It took me like 2 days to figure out how to post a picture the other day. So we're not surrounding them with wisdom, surrounding them with love. So what we have today is a Sankofa moment. And Sankofa, you have to look back and be desperate enough to figure out how to do things and bring that into the present and combine it with the realities of the present to move forward. I was told by one of the young people that is marching, I said, well, I'm not clear about what you all really want. Do you have a manifesto? Do you have a plan? Do you have a list of demands? And so, well, we're not marching for demands. We're just marching to get the word out about marching. So, okay, so you're marching so that you can tell other people to come and march. Well, I'm not used to that kind of response, because I was taught that you take time to figure out what you want. And this is such an amazing opportunity for us to change some systems, to put forth some bills, to look at the law, to say as a people what we want. But if we don't know what we want and we're just sort of out there, then I don't think we're making the best use of these times and this opportunity. So I'm trying to talk to as many young people as I can, even if little groups just develop things that they want. Now they know they want to figure out, well, how are police trained? Well, how much sensitivity training do they take? Or do they need more? Well, what is considered excessive violence in the police force? Is it okay to grab somebody around the neck? Is that how you guys are trained? Is that the new normal? So we need answers to these questions so we can say no, like Shirley just said, no, we don't do that in this city. No, we don't do that. And I'm hoping that they've got Andy Young sitting right there at his house. They've got Shirley Franklin there. They've got I'm not as wise as those people, but I'm here. You know, they've got C.T. Vivian sitting right there at his house. But who's called to say, look, we want to make a change. Yeah. We're not just out here to make noise. So I was trained, I was surrounded by these leaders. They opened their hearts and their minds to me. And I took that and used it to take Hosea Feed the Hungry from $200,000 or $300,000 budget to now $2 million or more, because it was instilled in me that I had to sacrifice my life and what I wanted because I owed the community a debt. So I couldn't just run off and go to LA and be an actress, because I was told on the deathbed of my father, you're the one.
Yeah. So important. You talked about a lot of things like writing the demands down. That's huge. Dr. Campbell, I wanted to go talk about, Spelman being a pillar in the Atlanta community, and our students enjoy having that positive reputation. Spelman Day at the Capitol highlights the need for additional pipelines and leadership for Black women, but currently there are no Black women running for U.S. Senate in the state of Georgia. How is the college assisting students to understand the nuances of how to move through the city in an impactful and thoughtful way that can lead to higher levels of political office?
I think one of the important observations that Elizabeth just made is this need to have for young people to be surrounded by a wise and loving community. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what it means to be at a place like Spelman College or Morehouse College or Hampton or Howard University. These are those places where we should be surrounding them by that wisdom. So you have people like Dr. Cynthia Spence, who has her social justice fellows, and they're having these truth and racial healing conversations, difficult conversations. She's calling on them to come up with solutions, to go out into their communities and find ways of finding solutions. We have alumni like Stacey Abrams, who comes back to our campus when she was running for governor, and our students flocked to Stacey Abrams' campaign. She came this close to becoming the first Black woman governor in this country. And her continuing fight with Fair Fight to make sure that the infrastructure of voting doesn't suppress or eliminate our participation has been incredible. And our students have been right there with her. If you look into the legislative offices of state legislators here in Georgia, Congress people in Washington, you'll find our students who are interns there, sitting right at the knee of the John Lewis's and the Hank Johnsons and the Dr. Jasmine Clark and state government, participating, understanding, how does this work? How do you write a bill? How do you make change? How do you change policy? How do you change the law? So our students have, I want everybody to know that our students have been incredible activists in the fight for change. One of the biggest professions that our students enter into is the profession of law, right? Our political science. We're one of the biggest producers of Black women lawyers in this country. So Spelman has been, Dubby Roundtree Johnson, who's a wonderful lawyer civil rights lawyer, graduated in 1938, called Spelman College in 1938 a hotbed of insurrection in 1938. Wow. And I think there's still that spirit is still there in the college. And I think that this is one of the reasons why we remain such an important part of the American community, not just the Black community, but of this country, because we keep stoking that, we keep this alive, we keep our students in contact with all of the ways that they can make meaningful change.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. In the interest of time, because we are overdue, I just want to go into this last question. People are angry, hurt, and exhausted, but they know that the fight has to continue. And some are new to the fight, and others have been there a long time. What do you all want to tell people to help them focus their energy to get involved? And I'll start with Mayor Franklin.
I can tell you what I do, which is that I try to stay informed. I try to get as many opinions and points of view as I can. I take a deep breath, I fill my lungs, I settle my mind and my emotions, and I go back in the fight. In other words, I know at 75 that the fight is not over. It doesn't really matter what I did when I was mayor. The question is, what am I prepared to do today? And everyone on this call already knows that they can make a difference. Something that is small actually can grow to something that is very big. And we have seen that in these protests around the country, started by 3, 4, 5 people that have turned into significant protests of young people against police brutality and of police abuse, and really asking for a voice in the change that's coming with or without them. But they're saying we want to lead the change.
Absolutely. Elizabeth, do you want to talk about what people are feeling and what they can do and what you do?
Yes, just briefly, I just want to say that we can't forget that there are people that are trying to feed their children. There are people who are being evicted, that when that COVID money ran out, there are people in our city living in hotels. There are senior citizens still afraid to leave their complexes to go get money and to go get food. So Hosea helps. Last week alone, we served 9,587 individuals, whether it was through rent assistance or utility assistance or through constantly we are pushing out food. And I will say that I believe that we need to really pay attention to the food chain, because I'm thinking that access to food is going to be very political in the future. And I know also that Spelman produces wonderful social workers. And I'm calling on those social workers and anyone that knows that hungry children cannot learn to come and join the movement at Hosea Helps to directly serve the community, person to person, to be involved in that kind of activity. Because you say, what can we do? Well, that's something that we know we can do that is going to create a sustainability and push the lever of hope in a community that feels now completely forgotten between the marching and the COVID and all of that, to say, no, you're still on number one on our chart, you're gonna make it. And so I need the help, and we are open to receiving that help. And that's something concrete that we can do right now.
Yes. Dr. Campbell, I'd love for you to have the last word on that. How can people take this energy and, get involved?
Thank you. I want to comment. Mayor Franklin said that she's 75 years old. I'm right behind her. I'm 72. We went to the same high school in Philadelphia, high school for girls. But I say that because I was retired in May of 2014. And when Spelman came calling, I felt called to come here because what I saw taking place on this campus every single day were faculty members, staff members, alumni who were, in Elizabeth's words, surrounding our young women, not only with love and wisdom, but the sense of responsibility. What I love about the Spelman Sisterhood is that I'm not just ambitious for myself. I'm ambitious for you and for you and for my community. And that's part of what this education is about. It's a form of ethical leadership that we teach here. And so I have committed myself to do everything I possibly can to make Spelman continue to be as strong and as successful as it has been for the past 139 years. And so that's my contribution.
Well, we thank you for that contribution, Dr. Campbell. And I just want to say thank you, all of you, for joining us today. All of my Spelman sisters, remember, in Georgia, Tuesday is election day, and to go out and vote. And I just want to thank Adrian for allowing me to host this talk today. And thank you so much, Mayor Franklin. Thank you, my sister, Elizabeth Omalami, and of course, my president, Dr. Schmidt Campbell. So thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful Saturday. And I think Adrian is up for some last words.
Yes, thank you. Again, you all have fed our spirit, literally. It was wonderful to hear each one of you from your various perspectives identify what we can do. And I just want to underscore, we are Spelman College, right? And so a lot of this energy and desire to protest comes from this age where our students are. And so we appreciate what you have shared, but we definitely look forward to being able to have more of these dialogues with you, because we desperately need your insight, your expertise, and your wisdom, as well as your motherly love. So with that, I will say thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our moderator. For those who are not members currently of the Atlanta chapter, please go and join atlantanasc.org, and we will look forward to seeing you again. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Car.